Good afternoon or good evening. This is Harrisburg City Council for July 7th, 2020. I'm Tom Mackin. Since we're also doing this telephonically, in case you're listening out there, Clerk of Council, would you please call the roll?
Okay, Ms. Bourne.
Here.
Mr. Coolman.
Here.
Ms. Materney.
Here.
Mr. Matuzak. Mr. McCarthy.
Still here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
And Mr. Van Hoosen.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Boy Scout who's going to do the pledge for us, Philip Ravis. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Minutes of the council meeting of June 16th.
Thank you, Your Honor. Everyone has received a copy of the minutes. I have not heard that anybody has any changes or corrections, so I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 16, 2020 as written and dispense with the reading.
Second.
Roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bourne.
Yes.
Mr. Coolman.
Yes.
Ms. Materney.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Hoosen.
Yes.
Thank you.
I am not aware of any special reports, so now this is time for letters, communication, and citizens' concern. I do believe we have some of those today. Please come up to the mic, introduce yourself by name and state your address. And
May I go ahead, Mr. Mayor?
yes, you may.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Tim Goligoski, and I live at 8 Maple Street. My wife and I have lived on Maple Street for 32 years and raised 2 daughters there, both of whom are actually here tonight. For all of those years, we've had a serious safety problem on Maple Street with cars, trucks, and boat trailers speeding back and forth to the city dock. We see it every day during the boating season, from April to October, with the problem being worse on the weekends. We've complained about it many times to city officials and administrators. We've been in meetings like this every 5 or 10 years. The residents go in with high hopes for a solution, and yet nothing meaningful ever comes of it in 32 years. The speeding continues, and the safety of our residents, our children, our walkers, and our bicyclists, and our boaters is compromised. In 32 years, we've seen plenty of vehicles on this street speeding and acting recklessly. But never once have seen a vehicle pulled over by a police car. Never seen a police car staked out near the residences for more than 10 minutes in the last half dozen years, except until June 23rd, when our new police chief stepped up enforcement in response to our complaints. Thank you, Chief. In the last 3 decades, we have seen only 2 additional traffic control signs, both 10-mile-per-hour signs, erected in all that time to try to slow down the speeders. There was another sign for a while, and that was many years ago, after a meeting similar to this one. The city posted a sign at the entrance to the street directing vehicles with wave runners to Orleans Park. But that sign was removed by the city a long time ago. In fact, the situation has only gotten worse over the years, with more and more boaters using the dock. And several years ago, as I recall, the city expanded the number of parking spaces down at the foot of the hill. On Sunday, June 28th, just 2 weeks ago, it was pure chaos, this was a Sunday, at the foot of Maple Street, with more boats and cars there than I have ever seen. They were stacked up 4 in a row going down the hill. And I know that for a fact because I was in one of them hauling my boat trailer. From the data provided by the city on June 23rd, in the last 2 years, the traffic volume in the zero block has increased by 91%. Also, the maximum in those 2 years increased from 30 to 33 miles per hour to 41 to 48 miles per hour. And this is on a hill where the recommended speed is 10 miles per hour. Frankly, we feel that the city has failed us on this issue with residents of Maple Street. We believe that if the city wants to have a public dock at the end of Maple Street, the city must also take responsibility for the safety problems that this creates. And that problem extends beyond the residents of Maple Street. It also applies to many walkers going down to the dock. And with COVID-19, we have certainly seen more stay-at-home folks walking down there. And the same is true with bicyclists who go down there. Plus, literally every Pearsburg resident that uses the Maple Street dock encounters a traffic problem on Maple Street. The mayor 2 weeks ago asked me what the residents proposed in the way of a solution. So I thought about that. And here's my suggestion. Obviously, there are things like speed bumps, there are things like additional signs, or other solutions like relocating wave runners to Orleans Park, which probably ought to be considered. But I do think the council needs to act immediately on 3 things. First, legislatively reduce the speed limit to 15 miles per hour on the whole length of Maple Street, from Front Street to the river. That means taking down the confusing 25 mile per hour speed limit sign at the beginning of the street, which is just 200 feet from where the 10 mile per hour sign is. 25 miles per hour is just too fast on a short, dead-end street with the biggest hill in town at the end. We do not need a wider Maple Street. That's only going to encourage more speeding. We need to reduce the speed on the scenic street we have, not increase it. The limit should be a reasonable 15 miles per hour, not 25 miles per hour, with an afterthought just a few feet down the road saying 10 miles per hour because there's a hill just ahead. Second, I think the council needs to support having the city immediately install 2 permanent and year-round flashing radar street signs on Maple Street, 1 in each direction. The portable signs installed by the police department just a couple of weeks ago did a great job slowing down the traffic. And thank you again, Chief. Unfortunately, now the sign is gone, and the summer is only half over. Yet we seem to be on our way to having a summer with many 90-degree days and no rain, which is only going to create more boat traffic to the Maple Street dock. And third, until these improvements are made, the council should allow the residents of Maple Street to reestablish the children at play signs in the right-of-way on Maple Street. Those bright yellow signs were placed there over a year ago in early June 2019 by the residents to keep the 14 children and young adults who live on the block safe by slowing down the traffic that we've talked about for 32 years. There were 7 signs in the right-of-way on a street with 7 houses for over 1 year without a peep from the city. So forgive me if I need to vent on this just a moment.
Well, I want to give you as much time as latitude as possible, but
I will-
there are some time constraints. So-
I'm almost done, Mr. Mayor. But suddenly this became a problem on June 15th. And the responsible homeowners and parents and grandparents on Maple Street got letters from the zoning department threatening to destroy the signs if they were not taken down in 1 week. All of this apparently because there was one citizen complaint from someone who did not live on the street. Seriously, 1 complaint. What about the complaints that Sally and I and our other neighbors on this street have expressed over many years with Perrysburg mayors and administrators about the unresolved speeding issues. I asked the mayor in an email on June 18th to hold off moving the signs until the safety problems were resolved. I made a similar request that same day to the city administrator and the zoning administrator. But I never received a response, as threatened, the signs were moved by the city on June 22nd. So what message does that send to the residents of Maple Street and the whole of Perrysburg? The message was loud and clear. The city cares more about enforcing obscure sign regulations than protecting the safety of our citizens. That the sign ordinance takes precedence over safety. That's what that says, and that is just outrageous and wrong. We deserve better than that in Perrysburg. We're basically a small town, and we deserve better than that. The zoning department knew why the signs were there. All they had to do was pick up the phone and start a dialogue with the neighbors to get to the root of this issue and try to get it solved. And all of this could have been avoided. But that was yesterday and this is today. If that overzealous act by the city led us here today to finally get things right, then that will be a good thing. Let me close by saying that the residents of the 0 block of Maple Street have pleaded their case for at least 3 decades with no improvement. And you know what? We're frustrated and tired of it. The time has come to find a lasting, permanent solution that protects the safety of our residents, the children, the adults, the walkers, the bikers, and the boaters. The reality is that the Maple Street Dock is a city-supported facility, and that means the city must take responsibility for both the good and the bad that comes with such a recreational asset. It's time for the city to recognize there is indeed a safety problem and finally to step up and get it resolved. To be responsible and a steward of the community's safety. Because frankly, you know what? That's what the citizens of Perrysburg expect of council. To do what is right for the citizens. I cannot believe that no one has ever cast a vote for any of you because they wanted faster access to a better boat dock and an expressway called Maple Street. Lastly, time is of the essence. We need action now. Not in a month or next year. This is only early July. There are still 4 more months of boating traffic yet to come. Hiya. Excuse me. I urge you to legislate positively for the things that I and our other neighbors have suggested here tonight. They are reasonable requests and should be enacted. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Westmeyer. I'm an attorney, and I'm also a resident of Perrysburg. I have been brought here by residents of the Maple Street, specifically the 0 block of Maple Street, and I had the opportunity to speak at the Safety Committee meeting 2 weeks ago. And in the interest of brevity, I'm not going to go through my entire discussion to keep everybody on track time-wise. But as you can see, Mr. Galagowski and the other residents of Maple Street are more than able to speak for themselves. So you may ask why they brought in counsel, and I think it's because of the frustration that they've had over the inaction over years and years as the problem continues to get worse, which has been evidenced by a speed study that was done only over a 5-day period, showing an increase of traffic almost twofold, over almost 100%. 500 cars in a 5-day period in 2018 to over 1,042 cars in a 5-day period in 2020. The maximum speed went from 31 miles an hour to up to 48 miles an hour. We're talking about a very short area of the street, a road that when you turn off of Front Street, as the city is very well aware of, to go down to the boat dock is immediately upon residences, where if we do simple calculations A car traveling 25 miles an hour with an average reaction perception time of a person is going to take over 121 feet to stop if they see something coming in front of them before they can come to a complete stop. Let me tell you, there's barely enough speed to do that, or enough space on that road before the hill for that to happen. A car traveling 48 miles an hour is going to take 286 feet in order to stop. So we're talking about a situation where it's the overriding concern of the citizens, not just of that 0 block of Maple Street, because as you will hear, there are several other just citizens that walk, bike, use the boat path, go down the sidewalks. So it's not just a 7 or 8 house group of people, but it's an entire blocks and portion of the city that are utilizing that their safety is being compromised. We need a permanent solution, and we need a permanent solution now. A permanent solution would include lowering the speed limit. Permanent solution would be putting in speed bumps. A permanent solution is not more enforcement, unfortunately, because we understand the limitations of enforcement. We understand that there are maybe 5 officers on duty at any given time responsible for the entire city of Perrysburg, the entire area that they must police, including accidents, calls for other issues, and they can't just sit on traffic duty. And we also know that a police car sitting in a stagnant area for 30 minutes may slow down traffic, but that is for a stagnant period of time. These solutions need to take place now. There is also the issue, let me backtrack. Just today I did receive an email from the city administrator regarding some changes that the city is looking to do. And I think the residents are all encouraged by some of the actions that are taking place. But recognize why we're still here tonight. Those actions requiring an engineering study, ordering signs, those things will take time. An engineering study isn't done overnight. If the determination is to change the grading, there has to be funding issues. If the determination is to take other action, those actions take time. We understand that. So we need permanent solutions, and we need immediate solutions now. One thing that brought this to a head was the removal of the signs, and that is a temporary solution. And you can see that that was a temporary curative measure made by the residents in an attempt to do what the city wasn't doing, which was slow people down, bring attention to the fact that there are a lot of children in that area and that people just need to be cognizant of it. Unfortunately, those signs were pushed back away from the road, making them essentially ineffective. Now, as many of you have, I've driven through portions of the city of Perrysburg, and interestingly enough, Maple Street was not the only area where those signs are popping out. In fact, in my own neighborhood on the way here this afternoon, I drove by a house, not 7 houses with 7 signs, but 1 house with 3 signs, right up against the street, right in the city right away. Now, are we looking to have the city go out and rip all those signs out? Absolutely not. Because again, we recognize that those citizens in those homes feel that there is lack of adequate signage and protection for their kids. We would ask the city to allow the signs on Maple Street to be placed back up in the city right away until this matter can be corrected. With that, I'm just going to ask the city to take immediate action on some of these issues and to continue to push on some of the engineering studies and get them done in a fast and efficient manner so that permanent solutions can be achieved. Thank you.
All right. Sally, you want to speak? Okay.
I'm Sally Galagoski on 8 Maple Street, and I had Bridget over years ago when the neighbors were all a different group of young moms trying to solve the problem. Dr. Fish and I met a couple years ago with Tom on the problem, and I think, being that we're now the long-term residents, Tim and I, of Maple Street, and we've seen the traffic get a lot worse. And with the COVID-19, I think everybody who has a boat boat is taking it out. The volume is so much more than I have ever seen it before. Tonight, they were just whizzing by, and the problem is, they're bigger, and there's the boats themselves, the trailers, the pickups, the wave runners. We've seen them grow and grow, and they speed down the hill. And the problem is, and John Eckel helped someone, he got a thing that says, kill, caution, blind curve, because if you're coming up, and I would ask all of you to please drive up and down the hill, and you'll spot the problem immediately. If you're on the hill walking up, and I've almost been hit twice walking my dogs in the winter down the hill with the car coming the other way because they don't see you. And the other way, if you're both ways, you can't see. If you're on the flat street, you can't see what's coming up of the hill. If you're on the hill, you can't see what's ahead. And some of the driveways, Fish's, with Dr. Fish's family, is only a few feet from the crest of the hill with 4 little children. And it's really bad. And plus, who knows what's going to happen this fall, but in past times, by August, both the St. Rose cross-country team and the junior high country team train on the hill, and they go up and down, and any traffic cannot see the kids on the hill. And we've had many more. This is the first year that, as the kids have had nothing to do, the amount of skateboarders has really increased, the amount of cyclists. I mean, that hill is busy every morning, every evening. It is busy, and it's just an accident waiting to happen. We get scared, and it's just time to do something because people want to be on the river, and it's time that we make sure that it's safe there. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Hatfield, and my husband and I live at 345 East Front Street, which is on the corner of 0 Maple and Front Street. We just moved about 3 years ago. We have toddlers who are twins getting potty trained, or they'd be here right now. That probably explains it enough. But we are also very concerned and agree with everything Mr. Goligoski said as far as the speed concerns and traffic concerns. We've only been there 3 summers, and my husband has yelled quite a few times at people to slow down, watch where they're going. It's also concerning that the road, isn't legally a 2-lane road, and you have boat traffic and people pulling jet skis both ways. I do agree, though, that I think limiting the speed is the better option than widening the road, if possible, because I think, like he said, that would just increase people feeling comfortable to drive faster. We moved here because of the family-friendly feel that Perrysburg is supposed to be known for. And when we received the letters about the removal of the signs, frankly, it was very disheartening. I mean, it was not... I guess I work in public education in a different district, and when people have concerns, as a public employee, you're supposed to stop and try to come up with solutions with them. And I just felt like it was kind of like, this is our rule, you abide by it. And it was kind of like a slap in the face when they came and even moved our sign, because being on the corner the way our sidewalk is, it's right against our fence. So they literally put our sign in between our tree and a hosta. So nobody is going to see that. They may as well just have thrown it on the ground. I guess my hope in coming today is that we can come up with some solutions that everybody can agree on immediately and not wait any longer, because it is a huge safety concern, not just for my children, but everybody. And just in the 3 years, we've seen a dramatic increase, like they said, walkers, skateboarders, people walking their dogs, and the sidewalk doesn't go all the way down to the parking lot, so people use the hill and the road instead of the sidewalk a lot of times. So I do want to thank the police chief for everything he's done. That has probably been the thing, besides our yellow signs, we've noticed that have helped the most slow people down, is that speed indicator sign. So thank you all for this time, and I hope we can come to a solution.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maya Fish. I live at 5 Maple Street in Perrysburg with my husband John and our 4 kids who are not here tonight because I can't handle 4 kids and we wouldn't be able to hear each other. So ages 8, 6, 3, and almost 5 months. Our driveway is at the crest of the hill. Even if people aren't speeding, I mean, we'll just put that out. Even if people aren't speeding, they would not see my 3-year-old who has a really great talent of managing to get out of the house like a ninja and go out into the street. And thankfully she has sisters that look out for her. But this is something that causes me great anxiety of some sort of accident happening. There's only so much I can do as a parent to try and encourage the kids to stay in the backyard, those types of things. Not to mention the number of, and I mentioned this at the safety committee meeting, not to mention the number of people that flat out aren't even paying attention. They're looking at their phones, coming up a hill. Tell me about, like, I'm flabbergasted. You know, and that was with our signs. That 48-mile-an-hour speed, that was with our signs in place. So I agree, yeah, we should be able to put those things back, but that solution that we had was hardly a solution. It was pretty much ignored by people going 48 miles an hour. As we've also heard from Mr. Goligoski, and we've witnessed ourselves, if we yell, hey, slow down, we've gotten expletive responses back at us. You know, it's like, okay. I don't want anything to happen to my children. I don't want anything to happen to anybody else's kids, anyone, any walkers, any student on a sports team that likes to use that hill for workouts and things like that. I think that's great. I want people to be able to use that. I want people to be safe. And I would plead with you to take action to at least legislatively lower that speed limit to get people to pay attention. Whoa, this is different. As opposed to, I suppose you're always going to get those people, but this being a unique situation of the narrowness of the street, of the shortness of the sight distance, the current speed limit is not appropriate. There are solutions that could be put in place that are inexpensive, such as legislatively changing the speed limit, such as putting in, perhaps, if we want to get a little fancier, one of those speed monitor signs that's a permanent one that flashes the speed. I like to think of them as public shaming devices, because the portable one that the police put in this last week, it was fantastic. It really slowed a lot of people down. Yeah, there were still a few people speeding, but not nearly as bad. As soon as that went away, I could notice it. Well, of course, I don't have a speed gun to be like, oh, that guy was going 35 and not 25, but you can tell people are just, there were more fast boats, and there's still the volume of traffic. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I might add, as a member of the safety committee, I'd like to thank everybody from Maple Street for taking some action. And I, for one, believe, as I've said before, there needs to be a permanent solution. There needs to be the portable speed devices that we mentioned before. The chief had placed there before, maybe one at the top, maybe one toward the bottom, and also a sign that indicates the speed should be lowered to 10 miles an hour rather than, 15 miles an hour rather than 25 miles an hour. That's an inexpensive way of doing things, and I'd like to thank all of you for your passion. That's the Perrysburg I know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Brennebeck-Corp, live on 409 East Front Street, most recent resident, corner of Maple and Front. I don't have any small children, I don't have any grandchildren, but as a recently retired person who has not much to do, you guys would be so shocked at how many non-resident people, non-resident of Maple Street, the children, the skateboarders, like everybody said, but I was totally shocked how much, I've only lived there a year, how many people are using that as, a place to go, right? Bike riders, walkers, just infinitesimally larger amount than I would have ever guessed.
Anyone else speak on that topic? All right.
Do you want to take this up now or at the safety committee?
I was hoping we could do it at the safety committee since we do have some information on the meeting minutes, if that's okay.
We can, can we just move right to that? And
Or you just have a,
We can come back to me. I'd rather address that while they're here.
there's a letter since
is it different than the one that was sent to all council members?
Yes, it's just a neighbor of mine.
Okay, all right, well, while we wait,
Yes.
thank you. While we go out of order, if it's okay with council, and go to the safety committee minutes of June 23, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On June 23rd, the meeting was called to order at 5 p.m. Committee members present were Deborah Bourne, myself, Jim Matuzak was absent. Also present were Bridget Cabot, the city administrator, and Patrick Jones, chief of police. Maple Street speed limit concerns. 9 residents plus our local attorney spoke to us concerning cars, boats, and trailers speeding back and forth to the boat docks. Suggestions that were made, we heard somewhat tonight, but also requests for complete traffic study completed by an outside firm to reduce speed limits to 10 miles per hour from front to river, consider a flashing sign when speed is exceeded, and speed bumps. Also suggested were to allow the replacement, that the children and play signs be placed back along the residents' homes along Adams Street. Chief Jones shared the results of a speed survey that was done over the previous 4 days. The survey showed there were 1,042 vehicles with 97% southbound at or below the posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour, and 96 of the northbound traffic at 20% of the northbound traffic at 25 miles or less. Less than 1% of the vehicles traveled over 31 miles per hour. Chief Jones said that he had officers down there and he will try to increase patrols in the area. Ms. Bourne asked if we could put up a speed trailer permanently. Chief Jones said that he wants to make sure that the signage we put up is effective. Ms. Cabot said that the speed limit sign that is missing from the southbound lane will be reinstalled. She said the administration is in favor of a third-party traffic study, but would like to do it in the spring during peak walleye season. She explained that to lower the speed traffic, to lower the speed, a traffic study would need to be done. And we would still have to follow the Uniform Manual of Traffic Control Devices. I explained I understand the concerns over the inaction and complimented the residents on doing the research and offering solutions. I did add that I would in favor of temporary seasonal speed bumps if possible, and that the committee will continue to work with the administration to see what we can do. In the meantime, as a letter was sent out today to, I think, the residents that have expressed interest as well as council, that 2 radar speed signs, temporary, have been ordered. They will be used seasonally and then be used in other spots around the city. It would not be the trailer that we currently recognize. Would you like me to finish the minutes, or do we want to discuss that portion?
let's go ahead and discuss it, it's okay.
That's council preference, that's fine.
Mr. President?
I would be okay with having the discussion, and for clarification for the seasonalness of those devices, from what I've been told by the administration, Matt, you can't hear as well. The seasonal of those devices, from what I understood, is that means that they're going to be there from spring to fall, specifically on Maple Street, and during the winter time be moved elsewhere. Am I incorrect in that statement? I'm looking at our city administrator on that.
Good evening, council. This is Bridget Cabot, the city administrator. In the previous discussion at Safety Committee, it was noted, I think by Mrs. Galagowski, that she felt the peak traffic time was from walleye season towards the end, the middle of July in a normal, typical year out there. So that's what we were kind of focusing in on and dialing in on those times. If we do see of course, periods of increased traffic, say there's a specific holiday weekend coming up that falls in the summer, we could certainly deploy those devices in the event of those occasions. That was our initial thought.
I have a quick question. I don't mean to put you on a spot about this because you don't necessarily know about it. Has it, you guys looked into getting the temporary rumble strips? They are available, and you lay them down and nail them into the asphalt?
We have not at this time. We're still exploring as to what utilities lie underneath that pavement and also what the wear and tear on the pavement would be with putting spikes into the pavement, taking them out, having water get in, freeze thaw, and what that would do to the condition of the roadway and how soon that degradation could take place. So we have some of our folks at our Public Service Division working on that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cabot, I thought I remembered, maybe it was either the safety committee or it was this evening, I don't remember which one. They had mentioned that they had an awful lot of traffic from April through November. To November, I believe it was. It wasn't just until July.
I will certainly go back and review the minutes as well as the audio video.
If you want to stay here.
I will just stand here. I'll just stand right here.
Joe and Tim, you both referred to a traffic study. Was that, when was that done? 2018, did you say?
No, there was a traffic study done.
It was actually a speed survey. That is a speed survey, not a speed study, conducted by the police division, deploying one of their stealth speed survey devices. That instrument collects not only vehicular traffic, north, southbound, it also takes the speeds of all those cars, and it'll tell you what percentage is going 25 miles an hour or less. Actually, I think every single point for every single vehicle is actually collected in terms of speed. And I'm looking at Chief Jones for that, he's verifying that. And then what the report does, it'll take like the 85th percentile, the 90th percentile, 95th percentile, and essentially the speed survey from August of 2018 to this speed survey that was done over the weekend, a few weekends ago, shows that there was an increase in vehicle traffic. I don't know if that's due to the time of the year, what activities may be going on, or if it's simply the sheer numbers of volume has increased on a permanent basis. But it essentially indicated, I think 96% of every vehicle was going the speed limit or less, both north and southbound.
Now, hold it. That wasn't true in 2018, I don't believe.
In 2018, at that speed survey, I believe it was 95 to 94% of all traffic was going between 25 miles an hour and less. And that information, Chief Jones, I don't know if you happened to bring your speed study with you, survey with you, but if you want to speak to the whole council about that.
We will provide that to the council.
Yes, I think, I can't remember if all of council received that, but I will certainly send that out.
I have a copy of the print if anyone wants to see it.
Out of curiosity, and again, I don't mean to put you on the spot, what's the generalized speed limit for that street?
25 miles an hour. So as you know, Councilman Materney, we would have to have a formal speed study, traffic study done by an engineering firm in order to have council legislatively change that speed limit.
Yes.
So I currently have a proposal request out, and I'm waiting for that proposal to come back in order to have that take place.
Now, does council set the speed limit or does the administration?
I believe the Director of Public Safety deploys all traffic control devices, locations, limits, et cetera, under the auspices of having the data available, backed up by an engineering investigation. But council also has the power to overrule any decisions the Public Safety Director were to make regarding the deployment of traffic control devices. But I believe council would also have to follow not only that provision of the code about receiving engineered investigations, but they would also have to follow the manual of uniform traffic control devices as well, because that is spoken to in our code as well.
That's Ms. Cabot. As I recall in the code, I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but I looked it up. It states in there that council themselves do not need to have a study per se. They can go ahead and vote to lower the speed limit.
I would defer to our.
I keep talking about.
Wait. Let's say one. Jan had a follow-up question, and then thank you.
According to traffic speed limits and signage is very heavily regulated. You have to be in compliance with the federal and state, and if you go out of compliance in certain areas, it opens you up for liability. And part of that is they give guidelines for speed limits, and we can modify those as we see fit with justification. But again, it's certain, like, it wouldn't be harder to go lower, it would be harder to go higher, so. That, but you have to follow the guidelines, you have to follow the study, you have to follow the steps to do that, to justify.
Respectfully, Jim.
Okay, wait,
And I'm talking about the uniform manual, federal and state traffic control devices.
Jonathan was next.
Actually, I was just trying to be ordered, just like you were saying.
All right.
Well, I would like to talk, I guess, Ms. Alkire would probably have some insight on this, but I believe in my limited work as being a solicitor in other municipalities, there are exceptions to those traffic device rules that are, if you look at the national standards, I believe if a road is not traveled as frequently as some of our main roads, that those traffic studies are more of a suggestion rather than a requirement.
I think there's a blend actually in the response here. Yes, you are correct. There are exceptions to it. What Councilwoman Materney is referencing is what my experience has been, is going through the steps and following the studies. Then you also have a third level, which under our traffic code, our ordinances, council sets the speed limits through our traffic code, specifically just because it is an ordinance, and all streets, unless otherwise noted, whether it's a state route, whether it's a school zone, things like that, default to that 25. So actually the only thing I believe, just going from memory, in our traffic code ordinances that's less than 25 would be our school zone. So we're talking about going even lower than that. So I think you're looking at probably a blend of responses here. Again, my experience when dealing with this in previous jurisdictions is going the route that Councilwoman Materney is referencing and getting that study and determining what's appropriate, and then ultimately determining not only what's appropriate based on the studies, but then on the circumstances that we're seeing as far as whether or not there's a true safety issue. So I think there's a prudent path here, I do respect what the residents are saying of wanting immediate relief, but there is a prudent path to follow.
Well, I guess I would say, Ms. Alkire, since the residents here, and I sympathize with them because I've seen what they're going through. I've walked down there many times over the years and seen it myself. You have speed racers, if you will, with going downhill quickly, too fast. You have children within the area that could be harmed. Not only children there, but I've seen children from other areas coming through there. People trying to walk, as they mentioned before, that type of thing. I would like to see that lower. And I don't think you need to have a study, take a look and have some common sense and see what's going on down there. There's a safety problem down there, and people move out here for safety and security. They don't move out here because they want to study recall for, I don't know how much that's going to cost, but that costs the taxpayers additional dollars for that, or something that would be a more inexpensive measure to do, which would be the permanent devices that Chief was very nice about doing with the residents located on Maple Street, and also having the sign for 15 miles an hour. I don't think that's asking a lot, and that's not costing the taxpayers a lot of money. We do not have the money to throw around right now. I don't think we should be doing that.
I think that's for us to decide. This is Corey Coleman for the people that are listening. Joe and Tim, if you wouldn't mind, just because we are talking about temporary fixes that may lead into more permanent solutions. So I guess if you could succinctly put what remedy you're hoping to get today and then down the road. I think they did too, but I would just like to.
There were three things. There were three things we're asking for. Lowering the speed limit to a reasonable 15 miles per hour. Secondly, permanently installing year-round flashing speed limit signs, similar to the one that the city has, although not necessarily that large. And the third thing is, until these things get installed, that the neighbors aren't going to get harassed if they put those signs back up, which apparently are also in other locations in the city, which makes me wonder why we were targeted on this, but that's neither here nor there.
So the first two are your more permanent solutions.
Yes,
The
those
third
are
one is
permanent.
while we're waiting.
Those are permanent solutions.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
I would like to make a comment if that's okay. I am almost sympathy of them, but if we just change the law without going through the steps, we face the possibility of it getting thrown out in a court of law. So we need to dot our i's and cross our t's.
Well, I agree with that in part, but I thought I heard the discussion. The council has the authority to set the speed limit at a different point than determined by the Director of Public Safety if there felt there was justification. Is that correct or incorrect? Like Corey mentioned, as Jan mentioned too, you know, I'm well familiar with uniform manual and all that, right? But this isn't a state route. This isn't a heavily traveled street. And we put a city dock at the end of the street. It's kind of its own case. So do we have the authority or not?
You have an ordinance, and ordinances fall within city council's purview. You have an ordinance that sets that speed limit at 25 within the traffic section of the code. It defaults to 25 per that section.
Okay.
So in that sense, I believe that council has authority in establishing speed limits within the city limits. However, I do think that you have to do due diligence, quite frankly, because you need to have uniformity in how these speed limits are set. While everyone, I believe, is sympathetic to the residents on Maple Street, what is there could always be another street that then comes up. If you don't have uniformity in how you establish these, you have to have some level of, I believe, due diligence of what you're doing.
Well, we've had 2 traffic studies done in over a space of 3 years, which tells me there's been an issue about the speed down there. We've heard from the people who live there tonight. And the liability concerns, I understand those. If you're increasing those, and you're increasing the likelihood of an accident. If you lower them, what's the biggest issue? Someone who gets a ticket can go to Muni Court and say that the speed limit set at the wrong.
Yeah, the liability issue, that's not as much of an issue. The challenge is always going to be is ensuring that your speed limit is legally set.
Okay,
that's the only way that you're going to have a challenge
in
court.
Right.
Right.
I mean, what's the other sanction?
There wouldn't, not that I wouldn't be aware of another sanction. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think that council does have authority to do it within the traffic section. That's what sets your speed limits.
Well, I'll let the others speak, but I'd favor reducing it to 15 tonight. And we're gonna put it into this endless study phase and do it. This will turn out like Echo Junction Road with the trees. We'll be studying it for 3 years.
Well, you don't have an ordinance in front of you this evening to do that.
Well, we could do it by motion.
Well,
Motion to direct an ordinance be prepared.
That would be.
We'll pass it next week.
Yeah, it wouldn't be applicable tonight, but yes, so you would have to direct us to do that, and we would do that.
I would say that I agree with what you're saying, Mr. McCarthy. Well thought.
Actually, if you don't mind real quick, there's one other thing that they made mention of as well that we haven't discussed, and that's the sign with the wave one runners and the jet skis over at Orleans Park. I recall as a kid, when we would take our boat over to the Maple Street launch, I remember that sign there, and when I heard that wasn't there, I was surprised to hear that. I think that's an easy enough solution to add to the street as well, just to remind people that that is a better location to drive that. It looks like Bridget.
Hello again. My understanding from John Eckel is that sign was removed several years ago because you can't functionally launch a jet ski anymore from Orleans Park.
Oh.
You would literally have to wade it out 150 feet into the river in order to be able to start it appropriately. So that is why he had the sign removed several years ago.
Hey, Bridget, I keep trapping you at the podium.
Nope, no problem.
The removal of the children of play signs, was that based on our ordinance about obstructions in the right of way?
It was, yes, and it was complaint-based We happened to be in a different section of the city in another residential neighborhood nearby. And there was a person who was complaining that we were moving their sign up into their yard based on another complaint, I believe, from a neighbor. And that particular person pointed out that it appears that the people on 0 block of Maple Street are allowed to have anything they want in the city right away. Why can't I? And we did not know about it at the time. So I believe it was Cody Grody went out and said he would investigate their complaint and went over there and saw the various signs. I mean, they're pretty uniform, if I remember correctly. There might be 2 different types, and started the process that he had started with other city residents.
But again, even on this complaint base, our base is to move the sign in the other area, and apparently to the request removal or demand removal on Maple Street is based on law.
Yes.
I think it's section 60.16, which, Mary, I think I'd like to ask the safety committee to take that ordinance up at some time. I can tell you the entire legislative history of that. That ordinance has driven me nuts. There's a liability genesis to it, admittedly, that if you let people put stuff in the right of way and a car hits it, then the city could be liable. But I've often wondered if that ordinance was ever constructed properly.
We'll look into it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's neither here nor there, but I just want to sort out that there is a legal basis.
Yes, there is.
No saying just because one person.
And in fact, after the meeting, the last safety committee meeting, I was pulled aside by a resident who was in here who wanted to talk about something that was in their neighbor's yard that obstructed their view of backing out onto Front Street.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a frequently used section of the code, I will say.
I'm not. It's been a frustrating subject for me over the years, and I don't know if there's an alternative or not, but I'd at least like to give it some thought.
And we can make sure that Mr. Van Hoosen has the proper section.
Tim, you're up. You have closed, but yeah, you might as well give your chance.
Thank you. And I apologize for being late. I was in a client meeting. Got here as soon as it was over. I guess first off, Mr. Attorney, you gave an opinion on this topic. On what is your experience that helped you form your opinion? What's your background that you have such an opinion on this that I don't have?
Which particular one are you talking about?
Citing the rules and what we can and can't do and what we have to adhere to. And the kind of it sounded like you were letting people know that based on your experience, there is a pretty formal, rigid process that we should adhere to. What do you base that on?
My experience working within the Ohio Department of Transportation and having read the Ohio Uniform Standard of Transit.
Jan, would you mind speaking?
I'm sorry, Jan, I'm trying to speak.
If you can wear that on your face, you can speak loudly.
I know. I have a quiet voice, as I've been often told. All my years of experience working for the Ohio Department of Transportation, I've read the Ohio Standard Traffic Control Manual, and I've studied and gone to class on the Federal Traffic Control Manual, Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which encompasses all of this. They lay out recommendations and guidelines for speed limits in various areas and stuff. I'm not against lowering it. My fear is we lower it, as Tim pointed out, and someone takes it to court and gets kicked out. That's my only concern. But so they provide a guideline and recommendations, a way to do things. Do we have to follow it? No. Were we better off for justification following it? It gives us a little bit stronger argument, so.
Thank you. I wasn't challenging you.
Oh, I know.
And I suspected that was going to be what your answer was, but there are people in this room that don't know what your background is.
I figured that's the point you were trying to make. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Councilman Tuzak.
So it's not just you shooting from the hip.
Exactly, and I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that, because she knows infinitely more about that than I do. Okay, which is why she has the opinion and I don't.
That's how I also know about those rumble strips, and they can be glued down too, and they're temporary.
Appreciate that. It's good to have someone on council that knows something about the subject matter when it comes up. I'm a pretty simple-minded guy, so it seems to me like we have rules and regulations and laws and ordinances that say what we can and can't do. And I'm not sure that anyone has provided anything tonight that says here's what we can do and here's what we can't do. I think that's step one. And then step two would be based on no, that's the law, but based on the facts and the circumstances. Do the facts and circumstances even warrant us doing anything at all? Then that's really a matter of opinion. That's our opinion up here as to whether it warrants us doing anything at all, if we can, if the law says that we can. And from what I just heard tonight, I know I was a little bit late, but we've had 2 studies done, and I'm asking myself, are we allowing the tail to wag the dog here? Because we've got 3, 4, 5% of the people that are not complying. Well, we probably have other streets in the city where a much greater percentage don't comply. Comes to mind South Boundary. We aren't changing that, so there's the tail wagging the dog here. And if, I don't have any problem with these neighbors who have an issue with it, because I think they have a legitimate issue that they're concerned with, because one little kid is one little kid too much. So I would want to know specifically what latitude council has, and then if we have the latitude to change the speed limit, which we all know it's being asked to be lowered, not higher. If we're allowed to use common sense up here, because as Tim said, it's a unique situation. This street is a little bit different than other streets. And I disagree almost across the board with uniformity, because uniformity always discriminates against somebody. So we can say we're uniform, as if that's always the right answer. I don't think it's always the right answer. In fact, I think it's rarely the right answer. Because we're being discriminated against right now. And with this pandemic and the way they're handling everybody the same way. They shouldn't be. Trust me, I had a 2-hour lecture today from a client of mine that is an absolute expert on this. I learned more today about this than you guys can imagine. And I asked why the public doesn't know this, and he said that's a damn good question. So anyway, we're treating anyone uniform, so I don't think we need to do that. So I would be in favor of entertaining lowering the speed limit if we have the authority to do that because of the situation. And I've said it before, and I really don't care what people down the road think that we did for these people. We don't have to treat the next case the same that we treated this way, because we did it for one. We don't have to do it for all. That's why we're up here. And if we didn't have to look at each situation differently, they could put robots up here, not people that think for themselves. Mr. Attorney, I appreciate your background and your input on that. Tim, everything you said to me makes perfect sense. It's common sense. I understand what the people here are concerned about. And if we can do something to help them out, because they're doing it in the interest of the kids on the street, I don't know how you would not do that. I just don't think this needs to be complicated. I really don't. If we need to do something along the lines of what Tim suggested so that we can do this, then in my opinion, so be it. As far as the signs and the public right away, I remember Chip Flagar had this 800-pound gorilla in front of his house. If a car hits that, whoever's in that car is going through the windshield, okay? If a car hits a sign that says children here, I imagine it's not going to do any damage to anything but the sun. So, common sense would say, let them put the damn sign in the yard, because they're not going to hurt anyone unless it's 6 feet tall and blocking someone's view. It's just common sense. I just want to get my opinion on all that on the record. So I'm not in disagreement with anybody in the room. I just want to make sure we're level-headed about it.
I know we're about to act on this, I feel like, but I would be remiss to not thank the police chief who just made sure we all got a copy of the traffic surveys that were done in 2018, 2020. So I appreciate you doing that quickly. It's valuable information.
Thanks, Chief.
And I would just like to add, I am not opposed to the 15 miles an hour, especially with the law director's indication that we can do it legislatively. But it wasn't the only solution that was provided, and I'm not sure how it's going to have any more of an impact than the 10 mile per hour sign or the 25 mile per hour sign. It still is about enforcement, and it's still about complying. I wish that would take care of it, but I'm not sure that's going to answer it any more than what. So this is one solution that was asked for, and I'm not opposed to it. But it's not going to slow people. It will slow some people down. But it's not going to stop that person from driving 48 miles an hour, just like the 25 did. So we're doing a partial solution. It's a quick, fairly easy solution, and it will help some. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that.
It's kind of like taking the guns away from everybody, and the bad guys aren't going to have guns anymore.
Well, it's hard to
They're still going to have
just want Well, let me just tell you what I'm looking at here, which is a traffic study that says right now the speed limit signs are 25. Am I correct on that? It's saying that 93% of people were obeying that, and 95%, depending on the direction, are obeying that speed limit. Yeah, that's 2018. In 2020, 97% are obeying, and 96% southbound, northbound, respectively. So what I'm seeing is people are following the laws at a pretty high rate there. So I can't necessarily make the jump that if we put 10 mile an hour, 15 mile an hour limit out there, that people aren't going to follow that based on the statistics we have in front of us.
That's why I said it would help.
Yeah.
But that 3% that is driving 35 miles an hour, those are the ones that are still causing the same. The volume is less, but since in that time frame, we've also doubled the traffic. So the pure numbers of those speeding is probably wrong.
If you lower the speed limit, the percentage of non-compliant drivers is going to go up. And then we're going to be here because they're not going 15, and only 68% are complying with the 15. But 30% of them are going from 15 to 20, which is still lower than the existing 25. But it's going to be a never-ending issue.
It's an expert. Chief, would you mind? Thank you.
This is Pat Jones, Chief of Police. I just want to point out something on the speed study that I didn't put out at Safety Committee because I was trying to get these numbers together at the last minute. So just to clarify some things, the two speed studies that were done, they're not exactly apple-to-apple speed studies. So I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody. The first one that was done was on a Tuesday through Friday. So it was taken down Friday before it got busy on the weekend. The second one was done from a Friday through Tuesday. So it did cover a weekend. So you're going to see a natural increase there as well. But the other big difference is that first one that was done over a period of 65.75 hours, where the second one was done over a 94-hour period. So just basic, your math is going to be more. So when you break it down to the number of vehicles per hour, the first study there would be about 8.28 vehicles per hour. The second study there would be about 11 vehicles per hour. So we're still looking at about a 32% increase in traffic during that time. So I just want to point that out so everybody's clear on that. So we're not looking at this. There's definitely an increase, but not as big of an increase as we initially looked at on this. So, definitely there was a higher percentage that was complying with the 25 mile per hour limit than there was last time. Last time it was a 93 to 95%, depending on which direction you're going. This time it was 96 to 97%. But we did have a few extra egregious speeds this last time around, so more than what there was the last time. So those are things I just wanted to make sure got out there.
Chief, when you said first and second studies, the first one, the 2018, and the second, the 2020?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And was the 2020 study, the neighbors mentioned that you did step up the enforcement effort down there. Was that following the study, or was it?
It was.
Study occurred?
It was kind of coinciding. We stepped up the enforcement about the same time we were doing the study.
Could you explain what devices were used in the study? And the one was done in August.
Right. The same device was used both times. It's a stealth radar, so basically it's a box, yay big, looks like a utility box that's put on a pole. So, at that point, there's no flashing signs or anything, so people don't know it's there. So it's should, give us a, true representation, accurate representation of what's actually occurring.
Just because you're up here, I'll ask the one question. Do you believe 25 miles per hour is too high of a speed limit for that area? And you can punt it if you would like to, but.
What I will say is, I don't know who it was here that mentioned, but the crest of the hill, when you're coming, going down Maple Street, you don't see what's coming up the hill. And when you're coming up the hill, you really don't see what's coming to you until you get there. I've driven up and down there several times, and that would be a concern. And as far as 25 is too fast or not,
That's why you get paid the
That's
big
that's not what. That's for us to determine, right?
Do you have a question, Mark?
Yeah, as long as you're standing up there, I'll ask my question so you don't have to answer the last one, okay? We'll go right into the next one. Based on your experience both as chief and just as being with the city of Perrysburg for a long time, do you think a compliance rate of anywhere from 93 to 97% would be a representative rate of most of the streets in the city of Perrysburg?
I think that would be, representative most. I mean, we have other streets too that are 25, and South Boundary being one of them, and I think there's probably a lot more people that are speeding on that street, but there's also a longer stretch on that street to speed.
Right, not a lot of cross traffic.
Right.
So if I understand you right, this street would be a representative sample of the general population of streets in the city of Perrysburg as far as the compliance figures.
As far as compliance goes, yes.
Okay, so it's not really a compliance issue, is the speed limit too fast for this specific area?
Right.
Okay.
So I can reword my question for you.
No, it's gonna make you
Yeah, I'm just gonna be blunt. I've never been down Maple Street. I'm gonna drive by there tonight. You know what, Chief? I won't even ask you. But it seems from the testimony that you guys have provided in front of us that given the narrow nature of the road and the way the hill interacts with the road, that this would be right for us to review for a lower speed limit. So I'll just leave it at that.
But not because of the compliance issue.
But not necessarily because of the compliance. I think it actually speaks, the statistics speak to what they're saying is 25 is just too fast.
So one quick final question. During the step up in the enforcement chief, were there any tickets or any that was prosecuted during that time?
No, there were no tickets during that time. And what I'll say about enforcement in general is usually when you see the big police car sitting out there, usually people are slowing down when they see that. So a lot of times, I'm not a believer in speed traps. I want to. We're going to do it right. So, you could, hide back in the woods or something and probably pick people off all day, but I guarantee there's going to be a whole bunch of people at council saying, the chief's just trying to make money for the city. So it's a balancing act there. But the thing with doing the enforcement and being out there, that vehicle out there does act as a deterrent. So that is, kind of like the radar sign. The radar sign is like, I need to slow down. Same when you see the police officer there. But I think that's true anywhere you put a police car. People see the car and they're gonna think about any of us. Even I do it. I see the trooper sitting on 75 and I'm hitting the brakes, not that speed.
other questions for the chief? I was just going to ask.
It certainly sounds like there's a favorable attitude towards an ordinance of 50 miles per hour. I don't know whether we need to hold off until the next meeting to have that put together.
Administration can have that prepared for the next, whatever, I guess, we want to do it at the council meeting before, if that's before the board, the committee meeting, we can have distribute that at that.
The next committee meeting needs to be rescheduled, so.
Okay, whatever, we can have it for the next council meeting ready.
Correct.
That's
Since
what-
council's aware of it, they may well be ready for it.
Right, that's exactly what I'm saying. And then
Clarification, we can't put that through tonight.
Well, can't we pass a motion tonight to direct or ask, I don't know what the correct term is, the administration to present, or to prepare and present an ordinance that would set the speed limit in the 0 block of Maple Street at 15 miles an hour. That's a motion.
And I'll second. Discussion?
One thing, I would also like to see the portable speed limit, or the speed devices that they had mentioned also with that as well, as part permanent solution.
I feel that if we do in conjunction with that, some carefully placed speed bumps, that would take care of the issue.
I don't think if you've been down there, you would agree with that.
Have you driven a trailer across speed bumps?
Yeah, when we had a boat.
Favorite speed bumps?
Not speed bumps per se, but rumble strips.
I would just like to clarify, this ordinance that you're moving for is just for the speed limit, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so discussion.
Mine is just a suggestion.
And the committee is free to do more. I mean, this is not precluding, this is a motion to have the administration prepare legislation.
Understood.
Right. Any other discussion on the pending motion? Roll call, please.
Okay, vote on the motion. Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coolman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome to stay, or you're welcome to go, whatever is your preference.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you.
And I will just.
Oh, yeah, what's the next committee meeting? That's good. Oh,
So we will let you know, because we need to decide schedule-wise.
We will let you know.
Our next meeting has to be rescheduled. So.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And I'll just conclude that topic by saying there will be further conversation about Ms. Attorney's suggestion, as well as temporary versus permanent lights. I know the temporary ones are already on order. So,
Will that be outside the ordinance though?
yes, yeah, no, the ordinance is strictly the speed. Yeah, these other two topics will be forthcoming.
Do you want to roll the rest of your minutes?
I do.
Okay.
If you would allow me.
Yes, you may.
So to continue with the minutes, agreement with Lexi Polk. Chief Jones said that over a year ago, he started looking at police policies and how to manage them. He stated that with police reforms, they need to stay ahead of the curve. The policies change as the ORC changes and as the case law changes. Lexi Polk provides a solution to policy management, and they serve over 500 agencies in Ohio. It is 6 to 8 months process, which they do a complete review of our current policies and procedures. Then as changes come about, the policies are updated. They are online and are interactive, the training bulletins every day to keep officers informed and updated. It also tracks acknowledgements that the officers have received the policies. This is also a risk management tool for the city. And our insurance company recognizes Lexi Polk and will give us a discount first 3 years we have the service. Chief Jones requested approval of a contract with Lexi Polk for $34,258 for the first year, which includes an implementation fee of $21,400 in the first year of service. He said that there are funds available in the policy training line item, and the committee agreed 2-0 to recommend approval. Purchase of new body and in-car camera systems. Chief Jones requested approval of a contract with Motorola WatchGuard for the purchase of a new body and in-car camera system in the amount of $149,174. The cost includes cameras for 5 interview rooms, microphones, 13 in-car cameras, 24 body-worn cameras, a server, and storage for videos on-site with redundancy, and a 5-year warranty on the server. He said that our current in-car system is antiquated, and we cannot add body-worn cameras to it. He said the cameras provide transparency and protection and accountability for the public and for our officers. He said the yearly cost, which includes hardware and software updates, is approximately $20,000. I asked if the current in-camera cameras have any value, and Chief Jones said they do not because they are 6 years old. I also asked what happens if a camera is destroyed or lost. Chief Jones said that is included in the $20,000 annual fee. Mark Weber, 836 Cherry Street, said that when he attended the Citizens Police Academy, there was a discussion about privacy when an officer enters someone's home. Chief Jones said that the state of Ohio revised their public records laws in April of 2019, and this system provides redaction software so that we can adhere to the public records laws. The committee agreed 2-0 to recommend approval. Review of low-speed, under-speed vehicles. Ms. Cabot distributed handouts of the Ohio Revised Code motor vehicle definitions and the city code regarding bicycles, electric bicycles, and motorcycles. She said that there had been no definition in the ORC for the type of scooter that Councilmember Coleman had asked about. And we will call those razors. Chief Jones said that House Bill 295, which deals with this type of definition, is currently stalled in the Senate. He said that sometimes it's easier if we wait for the state to define it, and then we can model our laws after the states. I recommended tabling this issue. Under other business, received notification that there had been excessive number of cars causing disarray in the parking down at Cook Park. Ms. Cabot said that Public Service Department and Planning and Zoning would see how many parking spots were actually available and strike. So the first car in, because currently the first car in determines the parking. Ms. Bourne said that adding parking spaces is not a solution because it costs $60,000 per parking space down there. She said that we should just lease it because it is not meant for a lot of people to be down there. Ms. Cabot said that we are not adding parking spaces, and we are taking the asphalt surface as it exists and striping, which would allow the police division to enforce it. There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 6:49. So our next meeting is scheduled on the same night as City Council, on the 28th. So I was informed there aren't many items for the agenda, possibly Maple Street, as we've spoken of. So what would the 21st, prior to our DORA meeting, because the week of the 28th is not good for me. So I'm looking at my safety committee members, Jim and Deborah.
Mr. Chairman, I would be fine with the 21st prior to the meeting.
So the DORA meeting is at 6:30, I believe. And at this time, that's the only topic we have, so do we want to say 5:30?
That's fine with me.
That's a question.
5:30. 5:30 on the 21st board.
With one item on the agenda, Maple Street. So far,
That's fine.
is that fine?
But that would give us a first look at the new ordinance.
Correct.
Before the
So that on the 21st, 5:30 is our next safety committee meeting. I do have two resolutions. With everyone's permission, we will read those together. I would like to introduce Resolution 33 and 34, 2020, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number in title only, to dispense with second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coolman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 33, 2020, authorizing an agreement with Lexipol in an amount not to exceed $34,258 to provide annual law enforcement policy manual services for the Perrysburg Police Division and declaring an emergency. And resolution number 34, 2020, authorizing an agreement with Motorola WatchGuard for the purchase of hardware and software necessary to provide a body camera and dash camera system for the Perrysburg Police Division in an amount not to exceed $149,174 and declaring an emergency.
I move that resolution 33, 2020, 34, 2020 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second. Discussion. I have a couple questions for the police chief, if I may. I'll try to be as brief as possible. And thank you for taking the time tonight to be out here for all these questions. I just want a quick explanation. I know you and I had previously talked about the difference between Lexipol and CALEA standards. If you could just briefly explain why the recommendation from you is to go with Lexipol instead of those CALEA standards.
Lexipol is a service that's going to assist us with reviewing and updating and making sure our policies are in compliance with current case law, state law, and federal laws. And as changes are made, as we're seeing that there probably will be some changes being made to policing, they will keep up on those for us. And so we're going to be constantly up to date on those policies. So that's more of the service we're getting. Now, as far as the standards go, CALEA is a national accreditation, so there's certain standards that would have to be met. That can be a very time-consuming, expensive process. But if we decided to go with CALEA standards down the road in the future, Lexipol would be able to assist with that. But what we are doing when we switch over to Lexipol, we will be going with the Ohio Collaborative Standards. And with those standards, they're statewide standards. It's turning in quickly to a statewide accreditation. So we're going to start with the statewide accreditation, and then we can, down the road, once we have this review and implementation done, that's always something we can look at as are the CALEA standards down the road.
So it's kind of an easier transition at this point to go with Lexipol.
Yes.
Okay, and then the other one is going to be a question involving the body cam footage. I'm totally in favor. You're not going to have a problem with me voting against this. But part of our mutual aid agreements, do we have any of those police divisions that do not have body cams?
There are some. There's in Wood County alone, Bowling Green does not have body cameras yet. I know they're working on that. Perrysburg Township does not have body cameras, but I know they're working on that. And since it's a Northwest Ohio mutual aid, I'm not sure who in Lucas County would or not. I know the sheriff's office in Wood County does. So there are some that do not have.
Because we specifically have, we have specific mutual aid with Rossford and Township are most likely to.
Right, but they're included in that Northwest Ohio mutual aid agreement, which includes basically all Wood and Lucas County law enforcement agencies.
Okay, and would you prefer that the police divisions that are assisting you or anybody in that collaboration also have body cams?
I would prefer that any police division or police agency has body cams. So, and I know, I'm talking to other chiefs, and I know they're working on that as well. And I fully expect the state to either, mandate or strongly suggest it at some point down the road.
Okay, and is there anything we can do as, city officials or, the mayor to help put pressure on those mutual aid partners of us to get those body cams if they're going to be assisting our calls?
I don't know that there's anything. I'm a very big proponent of them. I know that Perrysburg Township came in and sat in when we had the different vendors come in to look at the body cameras. They sat in on those as well, so I know they're looking there. I know Chief Hetrick and Bowling Green's looking at some different things, so I know that their agencies are looking at them.
Okay, perfect. That's all I had for you. I appreciate it.
Chief, I'd like to thank you once again for being forward-thinking.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Yep.
All right, so we're back to the regular agenda.
I believe we need a roll call.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay. So the
roll call.
The vote on approving the ordinance, or the resolutions, I should say, We'll start with Mr. Matuzak.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. Coolman?
Yes.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. All right, back to the regular agenda. I assume we have one more letter of citizen concern.
I just have one quick citizen concern. It's gonna come from my neighbor, the Jason Mang at 1740 Horseshoe Bend. He had complaints about vendors and solicitors. He has a no solicitation sign on his house. He has a newborn. He was telling me about his experience yesterday where an employee or a consultant from Greenix had knocked on his house 3 times and he had to answer it each time. And he has that sign up, so I don't know.
We have a whole ordinance about that to register to.
Correct. So I don't know.
Call the police department and lodge a complaint and we can.
I believe he's done that in the past, but he shared that with me, so I just wanted to kind of take this opportunity to remind our citizens that they are able to report that we do have a list of approved vendors. And if you are having, there are also hour requirements, I believe, from 9 a.m. to, is it 8 p.m.? Something along those lines, but if they're not in compliance with those things, you are able to report them.
Unless they're protesting.
It falls, the religion and politics falls outside of the scope of our ordinance, I believe.
That's correct. All right, any other citizens' concerns? Hearing none, quickly move to administrative reports, although I took 3 quick items. One, as an entire community, that just like everyone else in Northwest Ohio, I'm sure council will join me in thoughts and prayers reaching out to Officer Dia from the Toledo Police Department and his entire family, and also the entire police department family of the Toledo PD. It's a tragic circumstances, and we're all prayers and best wishes with that family and with the department itself. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our chief and our police department for we had a very busy weekend. And the 3rd, there was a rally, Black Lives Matter rally. And the department was well led. It executed a very well organized plan, and there was no real incidents. And I want to thank the chief and his team for doing a great job, and for each of the members of the community for the police department who came to work on the 3rd when much of the rest of the community was celebrating their holiday. So appreciate that very much, and I want to give a shout out to them.
Mr. Mayor, where was this Black Lives Matter protest at?
Started at the library, went down Indiana to Elm, down to 2nd, back up Indiana, back up Louisiana, all the way up to South Boundary, back to Elm, back to the library.
This was the second one, correct?
This is the second one, different group.
Who was the group?
I'm not sure. Nothing else from the mayor, the administrator,
No report.
finance director,
No report.
director of law,
No report.
president of council.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have one thing to mention here. In 2019, our community, along with several others, had voted in good faith on a 4-year water agreement with the city of Toledo. Part of this agreement gave some voice in setting of rates only to the surrounding communities. Unfortunately, Toledo has made national headlines in recent weeks as 1/3 of Toledo City Council was simultaneously arrested by the FBI and charges of bribery and extortion. The Water Division and contracts associated with it are not included in the 46-page indictment. However, if throughout the course of the case that this is found that these council members took payment in order to vote on any contracts for the water department, I will be demanding that Perrysburg use every remedy available in the contract to terminate this agreement. I don't believe that Toledo City Council members should be lining their pockets on the back of our residents when we do not have control over those contracts. So thank you.
Very good. City reports, finance and economic development.
I have no report, but I do have some legislation. Everybody's, I believe, received the legislative summary with respect to that legislation. So I'll just cut right to the chase. I'd like to introduce Resolution 32, 2020, and move that the rules be suspended to allow first reading by number and title only and to dispense with the second and third readings.
Second. Roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bourne.
Yes.
Mr. Coolman.
Yes.
Ms. Materney.
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 32, 2020. A resolution affirming that funds from the Wood County Coronavirus Relief Distribution Fund to the City of Perrysburg may be expended only to cover costs of necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the coronavirus disease 2019, and acknowledging the requirements set forth in Ohio House Bill 481 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. I move that resolution number 32, 2020 be passed as an emergency measure.
Second. Discussion. Roll call.
Okay, let's start with Mr. Coolman.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Ms. Bourne.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Ms. Materney.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. My next meeting is it's regularly scheduled time right now. Unless
Yeah, I don't have anything at this moment, but I'll let you know.
I don't have anything, so
Right.
keep it on the calendar until we take it off.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you. Service committee?
We did not meet last month, so there is no minutes. We tentatively have a meeting scheduled July 22nd. If we cancel it, I will let the members know.
All right, very good. Thank you. We already did safety, recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no report, but I will say that we are going to be meeting on July 14th at 6:30 p.m.
Very good. And probably at the next council meeting, we'll have a recommendation for doing crime.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Planning and zoning?
No report, Your Honor. We meet tomorrow at 5:30.
Personnel?
No report, meet the 28th at 5 p.m.
Public utility?
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have a report here. We did meet on June 24th. It was called to order at 5:32 p.m. by Chairman Jonathan Smith. Committee members present were James Attorney, Jonathan Smith, and Barry Van Huzen. Also present were Bridget Cabot, City Administrator, Laura Alkire, Law Director, and Alice Gassi, Director of Public Utilities. Citizens' comments. Josh Fleckner of 2662 Amberwood Drive was present to discuss a high water bill he received earlier this year. This bill was for 1,700 cubic feet of subsequent bills have gone back on. Mr. Fleckner said that his backup sump pump is capped off. He checked the toilets. He has no leaks. Mr. Smith commented this type of thing has happened a few times in the last couple of years. There's discussion regarding whether the reading device could be defective, but Mr. Fleckner said that he compared the reading on the bill to the meter and it was accurate. Ms. Gassi was asked about testing the meter, but said that since the consumption is back down, she does not believe they would find anything. So Mr. Fleckner would be charged with a meter test. Mr. Smith told Mr. Fleckner that we already checked with the meter manufacturer and they say that the meter cannot run fast. If it malfunctioned, it would run slow. The committee sympathizes with Mr. Fleckner, but said without something tangible that they could not give him the credit. The committee asked the administration to check with the manufacturer and with other communities that use the same type of meter to see if this is a more common problem. Next is we have on the agenda was a motion for sewer credits. Ms. Gasser requested approval of the following sewer credits. She said that they verified the water used did not enter the sanitary sewer. The first one, and I'll be making a motion together for all of them unless anybody suggests otherwise, is for 228 Mulberry Street for $1,568.68. A valve that leaked under the basement while they were on vacation. 1367 Running Brook Drive is for $2,069.76. Was a failure of the primary sump pump, so backup water pump ran. 903 Sherwood Drive at $2,014.16. Had a leaking valve above the water backup sump pump. The committee agreed to recommend approval of these credits, so I will make a motion at this time to approve the credit for the three residents previously mentioned, which would be Mulberry Street, Running Brook Drive, and Sherwood Drive.
I second it.
Discussion?
I have one thing I would like to ask. I noticed when I was looking at these totals add up to almost $6,000 or so. And I guess my question would be, what's happening here? It seems to be a common theme.
As it mentioned on here, the actual specific accidents were on here. The first one was a valve that leaked under the basement while they were on vacation. If it doesn't go into the sewer, we credit the sewer if we have that proof and evidence that that sewer credit's not going. So they're still paying for the water that was lost, not the sewer credit. For the Running Brook Drive, they had their sump pump failed, which unfortunately happens to many households around here. And they had a water backup sump pump, and when that water backup's running, they get charged the water. The way the rate system works is there's a sewer charge and a water charge based off the water usage. With the water sump pump running, it doesn't go into the sewage system, it goes just straight out into the basically the gutters and right to the river. It doesn't get treated, so there's no sewage treatment at that point. In the Sherwood Drive, it was proven there's evidence of the leaking valve above the water sump pump, which meant that all that water that leaked went right into the crock and then went right back out to the river. Now,
I have a question, Mr. President. What could we do to remedy that situation?
I don't think there's anything that we can do to remedy a homeowner situation unless we violate their laws and go into their home and.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
it's
just the cost of the citizen money, it's keeping the cost of it.
Yeah, it just seems like we see this, it's a common theme. I was going through notes from going back to 2018, and I noticed a lot.
If there's a way to make a perpetual plumbing system that never fails, then we won't have to worry about it.
That would be terrific.
We're not building on swamp.
We're on a swamp, so.
Mr. Smith, I'm just curious, are these credits that are going to be granted after they've already paid it, and they're going to be refunded this money, or have they not yet paid it and they're not going to have to pay it?
I believe typically they haven't paid that unless there was a time where they haven't created there isn't a average usage to figure out what that refund's going to be. But typically I don't believe that they have paid that. And I know Alice isn't here, so I'm looking at the administration on that. But that's
So we don't necessarily require them to pay that and then appeal.
No, I think since I've been on council and when I was in your position, I think it generally is not paid most of the time. But occasionally it might get paid and we correct it. But the general practice is the disputing it and we hold on.
Typically we're not requiring it if it's something that's being disputed right away, but once it gets approved, there is a late fee, those get waived and everything else.
Yeah, and there could be, as Councilman Smith mentioned, it could be a new owner on that piece of property that hasn't been there at least a year to understand what that credit could be, because we don't know what their average consumption is going to be as the new homeowner.
Okay, yeah, and we have had that in the past where we have actually identified,
I think one of those is actually on
a spike where we see it, we let the resident know that they can apply.
Yeah, and anytime there is a spike, there is a door, a hanger that is put on their door to let them know that there is an issue. So.
Well, he does not do that, by the way.
For the record.
All right.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Do we roll call?
Okay, for the 3 sewer credits, roll call. Ms. Bourne?
Yes.
Mr. Coolman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Hoosen?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is discussion of late fees. Ms. Elkai reviewed information gathered in response to last month's discussion about late fees. I will say that the city did a great job with the PowerPoint presentation. She stated that there are approximately 10,000 service accounts with 8,250 accounts billed directly by the city. She said that customers can get their bill via mail, email, and customers can go online to view their bill and use its history. She also reviewed the ways the bills can be paid, which include dropping off in person, by mail, online, or by using ACH. Of the 8,250 accounts billed, 836, or approximately 10%, are perpetually late payers, meaning they were late 3 or more times in a year. Penalties are averaging $14,506.73 per month, with 908 late payments. Ms. Elkire stated that we charge a 15% penalty, Wilson and Long Beach charge 10%, Toledo is 5%, Northwest Water and Sewer District charges $5 or 10%, and Oregon just turns off the service after 5 days. Similar to Oregon. There was a discussion regarding granting a one-time waiver of the penalty in a rolling 12-month period. However, there was some hesitation because that would give the perpetual late payers a waiver even though they're habitually late. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend approval of the change to Rule 24 to add language that if payments are postmarked on time, there would be no penalty. As a quick side note on that, there is currently, if it is not received by the due date, there is a penalty. So as long as we have the postmark, that way those penalties can be waived. In other business, Ms. Gassi reminded the committee that the state's prohibition on water shutoffs ends July 10th. Ms. Materney called attention to an email received from the resident about some work that will be done near his property. Ms. Gassi said that she contacted the gentleman and told him that all the work would take place in the right-of-way. Mr. Smith stated that Ms. Gassi and Matt Choma, Deputy Director, have done a phenomenal job getting back to customers that have questions. There being no further business, the meeting adjourned at 7:14 p.m. and our next scheduled meeting is still on July 22nd at 6:30 p.m. And with that, I do have ordinance to read. In a second, I'll get that pulled up. I'm way too much on front of me today. I would like to introduce ordinance 6/2020 and move the rules be suspended to allow for it to read by number and title only and dispense with the second and third readings.
Second.
Roll call.
Okay, Ms. Bourne.
Yes.
Mr. Coolman.
Yes.
Ms. Materney.
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak.
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance number 6, 2020, amending codified ordinance section 1060.06B, Rule 24, regarding the rules governing water and sanitary sewer charges previously amended in ordinance number 137, 1985 on December 17, 1985, and declaring an emergency.
All right. I would move that ordinance 6/2020 be passed as an emergency measure.
I second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Okay, Mr. Van Huzen.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
And Mr. McCarthy.
Yes.
Mr. Matuzak.
Yes.
Ms. Materney.
Yes.
Mr. Coolman.
Yes.
Ms. Bourne.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Did I say that?
As it is voted.
Okay. I didn't hear my name, but I see us. Oh, Mr. Smith, that's who I did better to be.
I don't know, I marked you on the, Mr. Smith, I marked you on the sheet.
I still remember.
Sorry. I'm sorry if I did.
Any other comment? Okay.
Yes, I do have something I'd like to ask. Do we have locations for the DORA meetings coming up, and what are the dates for sure? They're the 21st of July and August 4th, and times?
So I know that the times that we did set was at 6:30 p.m. on the 21st, and then August 4th would be at 6:30 as well.
So
I also worked on the locations, but I'll let the administration speak to that.
We are working on the locations to be able to find a facility large enough to accommodate all the public that wants to appear. Right now, we are scheduled for the 21st for your public hearing, or for your committee of the whole at the Hilton Garden Inn. So when we look at scheduling a meeting safety committee prior to that committee of the whole, we might want to hold our committee meeting out there. Currently, and unless you've heard back, we are trying to secure the same facility for the August 4th date. The Hilton Garden Inn actually had another event booked for that date, so they're reaching out to the people that had booked it to see if they are still intending on holding their event. If not, we can get it. We did reach out to the schools through Administrator Cabot, and the schools are currently prohibited from having any outside events being held in their facilities. Their facilities are still closed. This facility, we just don't feel is going to be large enough to be able to accommodate everybody, so we're trying to find a facility offsite.
If we could not find a facility on the 4th, and it would not be at the Hilton Garden Inn, could we move it back a little bit?
We want to move it back into August.
Correct.
Right, because we can't do anything prior to July 31st per the statute. So yes, that's then the follow-up that Administrator Cabot reached out to the Hilton to see what dates were available for them. So we'll be able to provide that update to City Council as soon as we hear.
When would you have that information?
As soon as we hear. We've reached out to them, we're waiting to hear back.
Okay, it'd be nice if we could plan. Is there going to be a public notice for both the meetings as well?
Well, the meetings have to be advertised. The public hearing has to be advertised for 2 consecutive weeks, and the location has to be advertised with that. So yes, the public will be notified. In addition to, it'll be on our public calendar. Our public information officer will post it to our social media, and anyone who's on our media list receives that date as well.
Can we also make sure we put it in the message journal? I got 2 emails today just during the meeting from residents who probably did not know they could attend, like Danny Barrett didn't know he could attend a meeting by phone. So we probably put it on social media, but we probably haven't put it in the messenger journal lately. So would we please make sure we put something in the messenger?
Yes, we will make sure.
I've got just a question for Chairman Smith. This relates to your minutes here. You said there was discussion about granting a one-time waiver of the penalty in only 12-month period. However, there's some hesitation because there are people that are really can't take advantage of that. Which happens.
So we ended up,
what was the reason for that discussion of waiving?
I think that was my suggestion initially was to do a one-time rolling 12-month waiving late fee. From the information that we received that night is of those who are late is usually the same people. And I think it was 20 to 30, maybe a month was a unique user. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so we decided let's try this as the first step, and then if we continue to see a problem, we can go to the next step. Because currently there is no relief. It's either 15th or it's late. Right. And the way states in there is that
I
we're not
wouldn't be surprised if I fall in that category of the repeat offender for that, because I don't get there the day afterwards, because I don't get out of the office in time or something, and I don't, for whatever reason, which I'm not complaining about that, but I guess this is still open for discussion, because it seems to me like all you have to do is draft the ordinance that says if you're a first-time offender, then there's a waiver for this.
Well, that would
the definition of first-time offender is anyone that has been late in the last 12 months or something like that. It can be done.
Well, that's what the rolling 12 months. We decided to hold off on that because right now there was no relief in it. I'm actually one of the people who will go and drop off my bill every single month.
That's right.
Because I don't trust it all.
The day afterwards, I'm like, crap. I would be in favor of providing this, just especially during these times, because
He didn't waive it during this time. It came up because there was one person in particular who sent their payment out. It didn't arrive for 40 days afterwards. They sent it out, and it was postmarked how long it took the post office to actually send it. But we also had other issues in play as well, where there'd be times where the bill comes late because of the mail, and as long as it's postmarked prior to, instead of having them rush around and try to get it, we're okay at that point. So this is the first step to see what things are, and it's something that we're not going to stop talking about.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Any other business? No.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.